Let me ask you, how are you on the post-structuralist philosophy of Jacques Derrida?
Sorry?
We'll come back to it. A Ghost Story is the new film from David Lowery, who was the director of Pete's Dragon, the remake. I think the actually wildly outclassed the original for Disney last year. Ain't Them Bodies Saints as well, this Western melodrama that he'd made with Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck. And also a film called St. Nick, that was his debut feature, which I think was released in 2009. It's only recently surfaced, I think, since Pete's Dragon on the VOD services in the UK. So it's out there if you want to see it. And I would recommend, all of his films are worth seeing.
Yeah, have a David Lowery night.
But A Ghost Story, there's only the slightest indication there that he would be capable of making the move from Pete's Dragon to something quite this extraordinary and wonderful. It's not a horror film, despite the title, although it is intensely eerie in some moments. It also involves some terrific old-fashioned jump scares. And nor is it entirely a love story. There's that David Foster Wallace maxim that he kept coming back to in his writing, every love story is a ghost story. The film kind of explores that weird relationship between romance and haunting. But there's more to it than that. It's really sort of unlike anything I think that I've seen.
So hard to
I've seen
describe.
this year. It's a very straightforward story about a married couple, played again by Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara, who have worked with him before, who live in this bungalow in the Dallas suburbs. She is not entirely content there. She goes out to work somewhere during the day and comes back at night. She wants to, we see her looking through on her laptop, city apartments. She wants to move somewhere a little bit more central. But Casey Affleck's character, for some reason, feels a strong attachment to this place. He's a songwriter, he works from home, and he just likes being there. This becomes a source of tension in their marriage at the very beginning of the film, as we can hear in this clip.
This isn't how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to make decisions together. Don't you understand them?
Yes.
So why am I the only one making them?
Because I don't want what you want.
Because you want to stay here? Why?
Why does he want to stay there?
Why,
Well,
indeed.
So they start off both in the house together, and the film has this very measured, meditative pace. There's a great scene where they hear strange noises in the living room, so they get up from bed, out of bed, it's in the middle of the night, and they go to look to see what's going on. The film actually opens with a quotation from Virginia Woolf from her story A Haunted House, which is, off the top of my head, something like, whatever hour you woke at, there was a door shutting. And it's that idea that when you're on the edge of wakefulness and dreaming, strange things can occur or maybe not occur.
Yeah.
And so they hear strange noises going on, and then they return to bed and they snuggle up together, and the camera just sort of hovers above them, and you're watching them for a while. And there's a sense, while you're doing this, that there is a presence in the house watching them, and that presence might be you as a cinema audience member.
Yeah.
That's kind of tier one of this film. After 10 minutes, and I promise this isn't a spoiler, I've seen the film twice because I wanted to make sure that what I says here was stuff that you have to be equipped with to go in to see the film, but is not going to spoil the experience at all. In 10 minutes, Casey Affleck's character dies in a road accident. And rather than moving on to the next world, he returns to the house under a bedsheet as a ghost. And this is, a Halloween costume, completely no frills. Of course, it's a very, very clever piece of costuming.
Yeah.
It's made to look like a sheet with eye holes cut out of it. And what he does for the next section of the film is he watches Rooney Mara go through the grieving process and resume her life without him. Now, this is why I mentioned Jacques Derrida, because Jacques Derrida came up with this idea called hauntology, and it's a kind of a very, very incredibly confusing idea, but I'm going to try and do it justice here. Ontology is the study of what does exist and what doesn't exist in philosophy. Now, hauntology, Derrida's French, so it's pronounced ontologie, which is the same as ontologie, so it's a petit geste. But the idea of hauntology is that something doesn't need to necessarily exist or not exist. It can kind of not exist and be a remnant of something that was there but isn't, but still kind of is. The idea is like the past exists within the present somehow. And Derrida was using it to talk about Marxism because Marxism had petered out. But had it petered out, let's see what happens. But then it's also something that's come up to do with a lot of music. Boards of Canada, Ryuichi Sakamoto, this idea that they're using noises that sound like they're kind of being beamed out of the past into the present, this weird sense of past and present coexisting. That's what A Ghost Story is driving at. This idea that the time of what his of Casey Affleck's character's life has been knocked out of joint, and he is stuck in this place watching time carry on without him. And what the film is driving at is how strange the idea that time could ever progress without us being in it actually is. These are enormous ideas,
Huge
and I'm
questions.
talking myself into 50 holes trying to articulate them. What's so beautiful about a ghost story is it does it with total simplicity
Yeah.
and almost entirely visually. So you have a moment where Rooney Mara will be listening to a song that Casey Affleck composed, and it will cut between her listening to it while just the moment that after he'd composed it, and then her listening to it lying on her back with the earbuds in, listening to it after he's dead. And it will cut between these as if these two events are happening in tandem. She then reaches back and her finger brushes the hem of his sheet. And it's this sense that you can, something as simple as a piece of music can almost allow you to reach through time and touch something that has already passed. There's another extraordinary scene in which she arrives home and eats the entirety of a chocolate tart, and basically
The pie
in
scene.
2 static long shots, which is being referred to as the pie scene. And the idea...
Once they did it.
They shot it once all the way through, but it's done from 2 static camera angles. She begins she's standing at the counter, she does the dishes for a little while, she then takes the fork to the pie, then she picks it up, sits down at the counter and eats it, and you can see the ghost is standing in the background watching her eat the pie, and you are, via the camera, at a roughly equivalent distance from her, watching her eat the pie, and you're watching it thinking, why am I being shown this? You know, how long do we need to watch Rooney Mara eat a pie to know that Rooney Mara has eaten a pie? But then the film pushes through that, and this sense that of, you know, the moments in life that really mean nothing, but that add up to an entire human existence. You're watching them mount up one by one. Now, the film builds up very, very slowly and subtly this big swell of emotion, which it then punctures in the scene after the pie scene in such an incredibly overpowering and profound way that I just collapsed into bits. And it is one of the absolute key moments in cinema I will remember from this year. I believe for the rest of my life. It was incredibly powerful. Where the film goes after this probably shouldn't be discussed.
I don't think you should, yeah.
What I will say is that before the halfway point, it reaches what any other story would take as the completely natural and pleasing conclusion. And then you're watching it and you're aware that there's still more than half of this film to go. And there's this weird existential chill that you feel that, like, well, now what? And that's, again, exactly what the film is driving at. This idea that it's to fathom what happens beyond the limits of your own experience is very, very difficult, your own time on Earth. As I say, it's very, very moving. The soundtrack by Daniel Hart, which, you know, employs a lot of those hauntological tricks. If you're into Boards of Canada at all, you'll really love what's going on there. It's very, very beautiful. A lovely range as well of sort of folk music, some string quartets, some... now you'll have to pick me up on this, but some electronic music as well. But again, it's all driving at this idea that, you know, sounds from beyond the grave, from out of the cosmos. What it reminded me of, above all, was Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, even though it is a much, much smaller film, because of the way in which it explores and articulates enormous ideas that will make you kind of lie in your bed and stare at the ceiling for hours in the most simple and effective and beautiful way. I just cannot, you know, praise this film highly enough. It's absolutely one of the films of the year.